strange occurrence here on the East Coast. We now know that on June 13th, 30 different tide measuring gauges from North Carolina all the way north to Massachusetts showed what appears to match the definition of a tsunami.
Officials believe the 6-foot wave was a Mateo tsunami, which are caused by strong weather systems that lead to a jump in air pressure. That spike creates strong waves that mimic tsunamis.
The wave was about 6 feet tall, sweeping 3 people off the coast and injuring 2. This is the first time a tsunami has been recorded off the coast of New Jersey in 80 years. A storm system that moved across New Jersey just before the tsunami is being investigated as a possible factor.
Living around here, we've had earthquakes, Sandy and all these things lately. It seems like it's, what next?
The weather system drenching parts of New South Wales continues to bring heavy rain and the threat of floods.
Parts of the south coast have now received triple their average June rainfall in just 3 days. It bucketed down again today. Even the horses have had enough as paddocks were turned into lakes. It came up in just a few hours last night and could take a few days to clear. Another concern, coastal erosion as wild seas batter the coast.
Locals say it's a 1 in 100 year event and this just happened to be their year.
Now, here in the east, we're worried about a lot of rain. Take a look at what it looked like yesterday in Pennsylvania, parts of central PA near State College. I mean, heavy rain, flash flooding. Folks had to be rescued by boat. There were streets that were inundated, turned into rivers. I mean, literally within a matter of minutes, they had to do a lot of high water rescues.
And guess what? We now have the wettest June ever recorded in Philadelphia, 10.11 inches, beating the old record. We still have a couple days to go. Meanwhile, in Wilmington, there are nearly 12 inches of rain, way over the old record, 0.9 inches. That's one of the wettest months of any time of the year that we've ever seen.
A big rain-producing weather system just parked along the coastline for days, showing no signs right now of moving. It has caused flooding in rural and urban areas from the Carolinas to New England, and just today, tornado sightings and significant damage in the area around New York City.
This is the kind of heat we expect out here in late summer. Not only is this brutal heat wave hitting earlier than usual, it's expected to be the worst in a decade. Tucson was hotter than Cairo, Egypt. California's Death Valley hotter still, approaching 130 degrees.
We could see temperatures at least very close to the hottest temperatures ever recorded on Earth.
Researchers say get used to it. Alexander Gershinoff, who studies climate change at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, says Western heat waves are changing.
The new types of heat waves that are becoming increasingly frequent are humid heat waves, and with high humidity we actually have much hotter nighttime temperatures.
Bill mentioned that the temperature in Death Valley, California was approaching 130. Well, the hottest day ever recorded on Earth was in Death Valley, almost exactly 100 years ago, July 10th, 1913. It hit 134.
On this Monday, 19 firefighters have been killed while battling a fast-moving wildfire about 85 miles northwest of Phoenix. They were part of an elite group of specially trained firefighters called Hot Shots. Officials say the crew was overtaken by the flames and had deployed their personal fire shelters in a final attempt to save themselves. It's the single worst loss of firefighters battling a wildfire since 1933.
And turning now to the weather. Heavy downpours are continuing to batter large parts of this country. 9 provinces actually and municipalities have been affected.
The severe convective weather started around 3:10 p.m. on Sunday. Some residential houses have been inundated and road traffic was severely affected.
The storm has caused 39 deaths and 13 are still missing. North China and cities in the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze River have also been hardest hit.
Flooding and landslides unleashed by torrential rains in southwest China's Chongqing municipality has led to 2 deaths as of Monday, according to the Ministry of Civil Affairs. In Chongqing, nearly 880,000 people have been affected and over 100,000 evacuated.
Scenes of devastation following a magnitude 6.2 earthquake that struck Indonesia on Tuesday, killing at least 22 and injuring more than 200.
They say the jolt damaged about 300 houses and buildings. 2 apparent aftershocks measuring magnitude 5 triggered landslides. Some people remain missing.
Hundreds of dead fish have been washing up on the beaches of the Mississippi Gulf Coast for the past 2 days. Mississippi officials want you to be aware, but not afraid.
Stingrays, fish, shrimp, eels, and crabs, all dead, all spread along beaches along the Mississippi Gulf Coast Tuesday. Officials say it's the second day of a fish kill for the record book.
We could see more superstorms like Sandy, along with massive wildfires, epic flooding, and drought. A new report says they could be worse than anything we've faced in 500 years. The World Meteorological Association says the last decade was the warmest ever. We saw new heat records on land and at sea. Plus, it was the wettest period in a century, with more floods and hurricanes. Professor Michio Kaku is a physicist at the City University of New York and a CBS This Morning contributor. Professor, good morning.
Morning.
How significant is this report?
This report is devastating. You know, you don't need a weatherman to know that something is terribly wrong with the weather. Everywhere I go, people say the weather's out of control. 100-year flooding, 100-year heat waves, especially in Europe, 100-year storms. And this report summarizes it all. The last decade has gone down as the hottest decade ever recorded in the history of science. You have to go back to 1850.
Waves as high as 7 meters pounded homes and businesses on Chile's coastline. The extreme conditions started on Wednesday, with weather experts warning they could last until the weekend. High winds caused the tidal surges, which have led emergency services to issue weather warnings to 11 regions in the South American country, predicting strong winds, high tides and large waves. In the city of Vina del Mar, about 120 kilometers west of the capital Santiago, the waves washed over sea defenses, flooding coastal streets and damaging homes and businesses. Seaside resorts also suffered, and one port was forced to close to all vessels. In another area, 8 homes were flooded and 32 people affected.
A lot of folks around the country found themselves dealing with extreme weather on this first day of the holiday weekend. Look at this. It seemed more like the middle of winter in Santa Rosa, New Mexico, after a storm dumped more than a foot of hail. They had to call out the snowplows. Many homes and businesses were damaged.
And here's some pictures. Take a look at the roof here, completely overtaken by the weight of the hail. Reportedly paintball-sized hail. And by the looks of these pictures, it sure does look like winter.
We are well into summer, but it sure doesn't look like it in this New Mexico town, covered in white after a storm dumps buckets of hail, leaving plenty of damage behind, too.
Along the Florida Panhandle today, heavy rain and thunderstorms caused flash flooding. In several areas, as much as 20 inches of rain has fallen since this morning. And highly dangerous rip currents forced beaches in Florida and Alabama to close.
Такие здесь твари обитают.
Mexico's Popocatépetl volcano has erupted in dramatic fashion, sending plumes of ash-filled smoke into the air. A 12-kilometre safety radius around the volcano has been put in place. But Popocatépetl is also having a major disruptive effect on air travel. At least 6 U.S. airlines have cancelled flights out of Mexico City and Toluca Airport, affecting routes as far afield as Dallas to Chicago. Passengers have no alternative but to sit it out and wait.
And if you're thinking about traveling to China, you might want to avoid this place. Take a peek. A massive mess of green algae has taken over in the waters off the resort area of Shandong province.
The algae first started appearing in the middle of June, and reports say it has spread along the coast from Jiangsu province to Shandong Peninsula.
So just how much algae is here? Well, according to the local environmental and sanitation officials, they're clearing out 11 million pounds of this stuff every day.
Torrential rain and heavy flooding has trapped hundreds of residents in their homes in East China's Anhui province. Firefighters have already rescued up to 300 people after the floods raised water levels to 3 meters high in the mountainous areas of Muzhen. The downpours of 200 millimeters of rainfall have isolated the Huibi village, turning it into an island. Firefighters have had to rescue residents using boats and searched every household in the township.
Well, let's get back to that major storm in southern Ontario. Heavy rains brought severe flooding to Toronto and the surrounding areas. This was just the first wave of a major storm system that hit at the peak of the afternoon rush hour.
More than a month's worth of rain in just 2 hours, wreaking havoc with the city.
This morning, flash flooding dumped a record amount of rain, nearly 4 inches around Toronto. 300,000 customers lost power. The subway system was shut down and may not be back at full strength today. 1,400 commuters were trapped for hours until early this morning.
126 millimeters of rain fell. That is the most that has ever fallen in Toronto on a single day. It turned roads into rivers, and though the damage is not on the same scale as Calgary's flash floods last month, there is massive disruption.
Some drivers were forced to abandon their cars after being completely submerged. Dozens of flights to and from Toronto were canceled.
China's worst flooding in 50 years has triggered a major landslide, burying dozens of people. Thousands of residents have been forced to evacuate as flash floods wash away homes and vital infrastructure.
Torrential rain has pounded large areas of southwest China for the past 4 days, affecting more than 1.5 million people.
And leaving at least 31 people dead. The authorities say more than 160 people are missing, but they're still struggling to verify the numbers. Almost 250,000 people have been forced from their homes.
The torrent of water has swept away nearly everything in its path. Entire buildings fell to the ground. Very little could withstand its force.
Mudslides and flooding are common in China's mountainous areas, killing hundreds every year. But this year's rainfall and flooding is unusually severe so early in the rainy season.
There's a lot of miserable weather soaking a lot of Americans tonight, and this is how much of the country is drenched. Rain, storms, in some cases dangerous mudslides.
Severe weather swept through nearly a third of the U.S. yesterday, from Colorado to Massachusetts, with possible tornadoes moving through Pennsylvania and Connecticut.
I looked out and I could see the debris from the barn itself, and you could hear all the wood being splintered.
More than 450 reports of powerful storms, an 86-mile-an-hour wind report in Indiana and Ohio, damaging homes and businesses. Also reports of 3 inches of rain an hour, bringing flooding throughout Michigan and Pennsylvania.
Dramatic moments playing out, by the way, in Colorado. Have you seen this? It was all caught on camera. Check it out. A flash flood takes over drivers on Highway 24 in Manitou Springs. This driver pulled out his camera and documented the entire thing. The water is ash black because the Waldo Canyon fire from last year. Luckily, he made it out okay, as did every other driver that was caught up in that. But really terrifying moments for sure. Could you imagine being the driver of that car?
Some astonishing images out of Arizona next. Take a look, a massive dust storm blanketing a major American city, Phoenix.
Today, an ominous wall of dust came stalking the entire Phoenix area. A giant brown cloud knocking out electricity to thousands, delaying flights at the airport, creating traffic chaos.
15-passenger van, weather-related crash. The van rolled over.
People caught in the blast, covering their mouths and noses. It's known as a haboob, a freak desert dust storm.
The federal government says the top firefighting priority in the western U.S. right now is the stubborn fire sparked by lightning and burning along the mountains adjacent to Las Vegas, just 25 miles outside of town. The fight has been going on for days. Much of the city has been blanketed in smoke. Now over 1,000 firefighters are on this job.
A typhoon has hit Taiwan's capital, Taipei, killing one person and injuring dozens of others. Thousands of people have been evacuated from their homes before Typhoon Sulik hit. Roofs were ripped from homes and some areas were submerged by floodwaters. The typhoon is expected to hit mainland China later tonight.
It's already hit Taiwan, where parts of Taipei were flooded on Saturday. Rescue workers helped residents in some low-lying areas to escape their flooded homes. At least one person's been killed, a police officer hit by a falling brick on his way home from work. Sulik is currently rated a Category 1 typhoon on a scale of 5. It was expected to weaken into a tropical storm over the weekend, according to the Tropical Storm Risk website.
Winds of 118 kilometers an hour generated 10-meter waves and a spectacular display for Yuhan locals brave enough to witness Typhoon Sulik hit the east coast of China. But authorities were taking no chances, evacuating more than 500,000 people ahead of the storm, including thousands of fishing boats. Dozens of high-speed train services have been suspended and flights cancelled, stranding many passengers at terminals as far away as Shanghai. China has been besieged by extreme weather. In the southwest, rescue workers are digging new routes to reach people still trapped by week-long storms that have killed more than 80 people.
A column of ash reaching more than 5 kilometers into the sky after increased activity in the Tungurahua volcano. Ecuadorian authorities say an explosion in the volcano on Sunday could be felt hundreds of kilometers away. The dust visible well over 100 kilometers away in the capital, Quito. Authorities declared an orange alert, the second highest warning level, and said that more than 200 people had been evacuated from the locality.
Our focus shifts now due to the fact that weather is making news tonight. Yes, it's summer, and yes, across this country, it's supposed to be hot in a lot of places right about now, but forecasters are warning about a dangerous and oppressive heat wave hitting a big part of the country, one of the more sustained we've seen in several years.
Brian, the temperatures are in the mid-90s here in Midtown, but it's felt as hot as 102 degrees in New York City today because of the humidity. These temperatures are not unusual for 1 or 2 days, but to have a stretch of what we're expecting is unusual. At least 6, maybe 7 days of this heat will continue into the early part of the weekend.
Most of the country, 43 states are in the 90s this week. 13 states have issued heat advisories or warnings, with heat indices approaching 105 in some areas.
Thanks for joining us. We begin this hour in China, where torrential rainstorms have battered large parts of the country. Thousands of people have had to evacuate their homes, and the government says at least 295 people are either dead or missing.
More rain is expected to hit large parts of China. According to China Meteorological Administration, provinces of Gansu, Shanxi, Sichuan, Henan, and Guangdong will see heavy or torrential rain for 24 hours from Wednesday morning.
In Jiangyo City, workers are still repairing the La Qinglian Bridge, which collapsed last week and killed 12 people.
The authorities in Mexico are trying to work out why hundreds of dead stingrays have been found washed up on a beach in the Gulf Coast state of Veracruz. They're investigating several theories, including the possibility that the rays have been affected by work being done for the national oil company, Pemex, in the Gulf of Mexico.
The United Kingdom is also seeing some rare weather conditions, with a heat wave engulfing the country. Hospital burn units have seen a sharp increase in sunburn cases as temperatures soar up to 30 degrees Celsius.
Britain is in the midst of its first prolonged heat wave since 2006, and temperatures show no signs of dropping. The country experienced the hottest day of the year so far on Wednesday, with the mercury hitting 32.2 degrees. But the hot weather has already claimed hundreds of lives.
The scorched earth, a sure sign that this summer heat wave shows no sign of abating. But while soaring temperatures are allowing many to bask in the endless sunshine, the extreme weather is causing concern.
Putain, regarde, ça y est, c'est parti là. Ça y est, c'est parti. Ça y est.
At least 6 people have died and nearly 30 remain missing after a landslide hit traffic on a highway in southern Colombia, according to local media. 10 more are reported to have been taken to nearby hospitals for treatment. The incident took place on the border of the Huila and Neiva departments, covering half a mile of road. Civil defense workers and local residents are clearing through the mud in search of any survivors trapped underneath.
What's in the water? People shocked to see parts of the inner harbor turn milky white and green as hundreds of dead fish float to the surface.
Environmental experts say the water here in the inner harbor could stay murky for up to 2 weeks. The Maryland Department of Environment hazmat team is investigating the cause and says the recent heat wave could be a factor.
Well, if you live in Melbourne, you'd be forgiven for thinking spring has arrived after the city experienced its hottest July day on record. The temperature reached 23.3 degrees.
very unusual for July. We've only seen one other occasion above 23 degrees in our 158-year history.
As Sydney awoke, it was delivered yet another gift from the weather gods. In fact, if the generosity continues and the mercury tips over 20 degrees tomorrow, that will make it 5 in a row. Something July has not delivered to Sydney-siders for 85 years.
With Sydney basking in sunshine the past few days, this is being called the week winter forgot.
Two small children are pulled to safety as floods hit Shandong province in eastern China on Friday. State television reports torrential rain left at least 10 villagers trapped by floodwater being rescued by local authorities. Villagers whose homes are at risk of being washed away have been relocated, according to state media. The worst of the flooding has been in southwest China's Sichuan province. Rivers have been reported at more than double their normal depth, reaching 11 metres in one place.
In Chihuahua, in northern Mexico, salvation literally comes from the skies. Trapped motorists, stranded by flash floods, plucked to safety by a helicopter rescue crew. Heavy rain has caused two local rivers to overflow, with floodwaters reaching a nearby airport. Passengers having to wade through the terminal building, a number of flights cancelled. Over the last 3 days, the heavens have opened, equivalent to the rainfall of an entire year.
A 6.5 magnitude earthquake has shaken New Zealand's capital, Wellington. It was centred in the Cook Strait east of Seddon. No injuries have been reported, but power is out across the city and buildings are damaged.
Where Seddon was rattled by a 4.2 magnitude jolt just after 7 this morning. 13 minutes later, a 5.8 hit the area. That's stronger than Friday's quake, and there have been constant shakes ever since, including a 4.9 just before 11 o'clock this morning. There have now been dozens of quakes in the past 11 hours.
Tonight across much of the east, high temperatures near 90, and who would have thought that would seem cool? But it is relief after that historic heat wave. The system pushing it out brought extreme weather with it. Tonight, ABC meteorologist Ginger Z on that, and the giant storm in the southwest.
Tonight, rescued in Phoenix, dangling from a helicopter as many in the southwest are suffering, submerged by that seasonal monsoon. And standing water bringing this highway to a standstill. The streets in Las Vegas swallowed whole. Earlier today, Phoenix had almost an inch of rain in just 30 minutes. They're already 3 times their monthly average for July. And it's not just the West feeling pruned. As a cold front sliced through the Great Lakes, breaking that week-long heat, it came with destructive thunderstorms and flash flooding. Near Cleveland, Ohio, winds of 110 miles per hour in an EF1 tornado ripped apart this school.
With countless buildings flattened by earthquakes in China's northeastern province of Gansu, authorities in the hard-hit city of Dingxi say tens of thousands of people have been left homeless, while the death toll in the region continues to rise. Local media reports that at least 94 people have been killed. Hundreds more have been wounded, with some estimates putting the number of injured as high as 1,000.
Officials fear the death toll could rise as many homes in the affected areas have collapsed or sustained serious damage following subsequent flooding and mudslides.
State media reported over 1,200 buildings collapsed during the quake, leaving more than 27,000 people homeless in the worst affected areas.
Fletcher. Another question on the in an interview with the Los Angeles Times on April 21st, you said that you told the Associated Press that the American government has created weather tampering techniques so that the New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans and to control the rest. Would you explain what you were trying to say?
Well, what I was trying to say is exactly what I said. There is weather control techniques. We have a complete package on that, which I did not bring, but I certainly will see to it that it is brought in for the record. Number one, the entire patents on the equipment. Number two, Senator Claiborne Pell's complete statement and story of his own that not only does it exist, but that we even utilize it as far back as the Vietnam War. You might want to touch base with Senator Pell.
I just want to repeat before I turn to
questions. Yes, but we do have all that information.
You're saying the government has created weather tampering techniques so that the, quote, New World Order will be able to starve millions of Americans.
Worldwide.
Millions of Americans, and to control the rest.
Yes, sir, and that's my belief. As bizarre as that sounds, if somebody had told me that that equipment even existed 10 years ago, I would have thought they were nuts, sir. And at this point in time, we have all the documents to prove it. And if you think that 85 tornadoes takes place in the middle of our growing area by simultaneous accident, I'm sorry. With the equipment that's already set up internationally, and as bizarre as that is, it is proven and documented. We will supply you with those documents. As bizarre as that is, I would say that weather wars, and this is quoting actually Senator Claiborne Pell himself, that they are the greatest weapon ever created in the world, and that's the Senator's own statement. So yes, I do stand on that.
Thank you, Ms. Fletcher. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Senator.